Rosie Cruz. Welcome to Bay Area Independent Filmmakers. I am here with a wonderful filmmaker I had the opportunity to work with years ago. And if you don't know him by now, you get to know HP Mendoza. He's here, actually he released his last film, Bitter Melon, during the holiday seasons, which is an amazing family flick that you all need to go see. But here, welcome.
Thank you.
HP.
Thank you very much.
I'm really excited you
Good
came.
to be back on this side of the camera with you for a change.
I know.
It's nice.
I got to work on one of his films, and he's just an amazing director.
Oh, thank you.
So, I always like to start off getting to know how, filmmakers got into, their art, and then leading into being a professional director, filmmaker, actor. Can you talk about, the beginning? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, how far back do you want to go? There's the super youth-oriented stuff that might be kind of boring, but the truth is, I was given a Super 8 camera at the age of 5, so I learned how to work with actual film, but I didn't know that all the cartridges only held 3 minutes, so there I was shooting these 2-hour epics, not knowing that it was at the end of the reel, and then it would get developed by my father, and I'd have 3 minutes of footage. But I was kind of bit by the bug pretty early on, right? And I think I would try to find ways to tell stories by, joining theater, doing theater in school, whether it was elementary or high school. And I was lucky enough, went to Westmore High School. We were one of the few high schools that actually had a film literature program. And I think that's where I kind of sandpapered my eyes, right? Because I think if you look at what I was watching as a child, I would say I want to make movies just like these movies. I want to make my own Wizard of Oz. I want to make my own Mary Poppins. Mm-hmm. And then I think film literature in high school was when I was introduced to other films, right? I was introduced to the work of Orson Welles. I was introduced to the work of Ingmar Bergman, and Spielberg and Coppola and Scorsese. All the people who aren't children's films,
Yeah.
Yeah, fast forward to college, I went to the College of San Mateo because I was a snobby 18-year-old who didn't know any better because the digital revolution was upon us at that time. I remember it was 1994. Yep. And not just the digital revolution, but the video revolution.
Yeah.
Filmmaking, making a feature-length film on video, and I remember saying, that'll never work. And I was like, I'm not going to go to State, I'm not going to go to these other colleges. I specifically did my research and found the last Bay Area college that was teaching on film. And that was the College of San Mateo.
That's in my neighborhood. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so you're in San Mateo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great college, but I did not know that. Yes, it is a great campus. It has great views, too.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know, it's beautiful there.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that they were one of the last ones that actually taught on,
celluloid.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's incredible. Okay.
Yeah, and we were learning on 8 and 16. And that's where I met Richard Wong, who was the director of Colma the Musical. And we were the only students. We were 17, actually, now that I think about it. 17 and being the only kids who weren't claiming that they wanted to be the next Tarantino. Because I think Pulp Fiction had just come out, and everybody, all of our final films, all the film finals had some Tarantino aspect to it. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Rich and I would, when the people ask us what kind of movies do you want to make, we'd say we want to make movies like West Side Story. And I'll never forget my counselor at the time saying, okay, so you want to make musicals. My advice to you is don't. Why would you jump into such a difficult genre that isn't necessarily lucrative or successful?
Mm-hmm. That is true, because I have to admit, I've been doing research, and I did find that musicals kind of fell at the bottom. But it is interesting. They are fun and energetic. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
I do love the musicals. So why they don't make any money, but carry on. I want to hear the story.
Well, so I don't know if I love musicals. I love the musicals that I love, right? It's kind of I don't think I love any genres, right? There's a lot of bad stuff out there, but the musicals that I like, I love. And I remember then going to the East Coast and working in a lot of theater and being a copywriter for a while, and also kind of honing in on my musicianship and working with a couple of bands. and I wrote this concept album called Colma the Musical. It was a joke, you know, and it started off as one song, and then I wrote two, and I was like, this is going to be a gift for one of my good friends who still lives in Colma. I'm going to send this off, and my brother said to me at the time, kind of weird when you send two songs. One song is good, but once you go to two, you might as well write three.
Okay.
And I kept writing the story through this music, and it became Colma the Musical. And Rich Wong, my old college buddy, the other musical lover, found me, and I moved back to California to do Colma the Musical. And it's kind of great because it was my first time working on a feature film, and it was like my entry back into filmmaking, away from theater and away from working in music specifically. And yeah, it's now distributed by Lionsgate, and I kind of feel like telling my old counselor, it's like, okay, so what's that about musicals not being successful? For the record, I mean, it's not like we made like buckets of money off of it. You know, it's still, you know, to your point, musicals still kind of are at the bottom. So you know, I was able to pull myself out of that pigeonhole at least.
Well, I think that I have theories, but I absolutely love musicals. You know, whether they're on, you know, on the stage or I find them fun. You know, even the docudramas of, you know, rock stars. They're just, you know, their music comes through and it just energizes you and creates a lot of emotion, and that's what the music does. Really, is just create emotion. So I you know, I don't know. But you did do another one right after that, another musical. So your process was interesting, the way you described it. You started off just writing music.
Yeah.
Did you do that again for the next one?
The next one was called Fruit Fly, and that was because the Center for Asian American Media had premiered Colma, and they kind of introduced me to a crowd that this isn't conceit. I'm just going to say what's on my mind. It seemed like they fell in love with Colma, and and I'd go to screenings and people had memorized the lyrics. And I remember going to sing-alongs and feeling so insecure, thinking, we're going to have a sing-along for Colma? Who's going to know the words? And I'm sitting in the audience and people are singing along with the words that I'd written, and just like getting really emotional and just thinking, like, no, I'm going to write another one. But it was a very gay and very Asian musical, which I think might have been also working against it at the time. But I take nothing back, because it's like, you know, if you need a Gaysian musical maker in the independent world, that would have been me. But Fruit Fly, yeah, it was called Fruit Fly, and that was a very different process. That was a little more standard. That was very much like, there's a story I want to tell. It's a little more, you know, it's a little more oblique, you know, because I always want to make kind of art housey stuff, but I kind of want to do Trojan horse experiments with it, right? Like, I want to pull people in with fun and kind of give people an art house ending. I always like the idea of doing that, and you know, there are very few movies that do that. You either have like full-blown art house or full-blown fun, right? Like the dividing line between commerce and art, and I don't even know where I exist, and I kind of don't care these days, right? At the time, I was like, yeah, I want to have like I want to make this film about a Filipino performance artist who's trying to find her biological mother, but finds out in the process that all she wants to do is hang out with gay men. That's and let's make it a musical. And so yeah, I wrote the script first and then the music. So it was a different process at the time.
Okay, so they're very different experiences for you. Do you streamline that in that sort of process in all your films now, or does everything just kind of takes its own animal free form and you just
it's more the latter. I do think I just have a messy head, and I kind of no matter how many post-its I put up on the wall and how many times I storyboard things, I kind of have to go with my messiness, because there is a structure to my chaos, right?
I believe that.
But
totally.
I think only I can convey it. You know, I mean, that's kind of a director's job, right? Is to feign structure from chaos, right? And at least make people feel comfortable enough on set to believe that there is one. And and the truth is that with every film, the process has to reset itself, because the next film after that, for the record, Fruit Fly was the first one I directed. And the next film, I took a different tack, because I started remembering like who my heroes were. And I wanted to sort of do like my homage to Ingmar Bergman and Stanley Kubrick, but I love horror films at the same time. So, you know, but I didn't necessarily want to do The Shining. I wanted to do my own story, and I did I Am a Ghost. And you know, it's so art house, and I think I said to myself, I don't want to be that pretentious guy that says if you don't get it, then you just don't get it. I kind of want to reward you at the same time. So like the first 20 minutes is dialogue free. The second act is like very much like a talky whodunit thriller, and the last act is a horror film that just has its reward. No analog to Fruit Fly, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's not about writing. I mean, although I did compose the music for I Am a Ghost, it was its own beast. And so, moving forward after that, I Am a Ghost, I think, is arguably my most successful film. I don't know what the metric for success is when it comes to independent film, but I feel like that's what people talk about, right? And people, it's so successful that people call it my first film, which I'm not going to correct people. They can believe that because it makes it look like I came out with a bang, right? But after that, I had Bitter Melon, which is, for all intents and purposes,
your latest.
my latest. The way it just
Yeah.
opened this past Christmas. It's a little more of a standard film, right? So I think Bitter Melon was my chance to do it like the big boys do, right? Because I was working with ABS-CBN, who is the biggest Filipino media conglomerate. Also working with support from SF Film, and I, you know, had Brian Benson was one of the producers. He's one of the producers on Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah.
And it was very much an exercise of, okay, let's get a bunch of people who've been doing a lot of mainstream films working on this project to try to rein me in, you know, and I got it. I think it was a great experiment. And I was like, yeah, but the weirdness is baked into the script. So it's always going to be a little bit weird, right?
Because the script is the foundation for everything. So
Right.
if you get it in there, there's a clue there.
Right, exactly, yeah. And yeah, I think if I look at that, I think that's probably my most recent film. Bitter Melon is probably the film that has the most obvious process structure. You know what I mean? It's very much it's an ensemble piece about a family, and it's you know, it's not an art house horror film. It's not an independent musical. It's people know exactly what to expect when they see the film, but I still like to think that it still surprises people in the end.
So what brought on this concept? And this is a two-part question. And then how many others participated in evolving that concept?
Bitter Melon was a script I've been writing since 1997.
Wow.
And it wasn't even called Bitter Melon back then. It was called He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. Because I had this idea that I would make a super wacky, like black comedy about a Filipino family trying to deal with domestic abuse. And I know that always like raises a brow, like, oh, so you think domestic abuse is funny? I'm like, no, I'm making a comedy that about the decisions people make around a drama about domestic abuse. It's not a comedy about violence, about domestic violence. But I will say that I do think I was a lot wackier back then. I was trying to be outrageous, I think. I think I was trying to make people feel uncomfortable.
Well,
you know?
that's a good purpose. To bring up a subject like that, it's hard. You don't want to beat people over the head, but you want them to learn. At least that's what I think. And humor
Yeah.
does a lot.
It's a Trojan horse,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It sneaks in and it kind of blossoms in your head well after the movie is over. You know, at least that's what I'm talking about humor, not my film. You know, I'm hoping my film does that. I think it does. But yeah, I do think though that because it was coming from a personal place, right? You know, I keep saying I'm not the spokesperson for all Filipino Americans, but I do like to think that if you're a Filipino American in the 20th century, you do have some close brushes with domestic violence, you know? And I'm making statements about that. Actually, the movie is very much my statement about masculinity. It's kind of my attack on toxic masculinity, but I feel like if you put that up front, that's like spinach, you know? Eat it, you'll like it, you know? Swallow it, you know? It's like I'm trying to teach you something, and it's like, no, I don't really want it to be that didactic. I want people to walk in and think like, well, what a crazy Christmas movie. It's a movie about a Filipino family that spends Christmas trying to kill the abusive member of the family. Oh, what fun. And I'd like to think that by the time it hits the drama portion of the film, people will be provoked. You know, I'd like to think that Bitter Melon's a provocation, and provocations often have to be a little offensive.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, so over the past 20 years, because I had my residency with the SF Film Society in 2017, so that was the 20-year mark of the script.
Wow.
And you know, full disclosure, big surprise, we couldn't get the rights to the Hollies song, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. So the title had changed to Bitter Melon. And I actually prefer that title because the truth is, the original idea for the film was supposed to be this wacky comedy that used a lot of pop songs in a really macabre way. Like, they tie up the brother and they threaten to like torture him with all these blades, and like they have "Killing Me Softly" playing at the same time, right? You know, and it depended on a lot of the script depended on the wacky humor that comes from like ironic needle drop choices, you know, like drop a needle here and there's He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, when they're supposed to be carrying body parts, right? And yeah, I think what happened was I was handling this really sensitive material that my family's really close to too, right? And they were always for it, but I realized that I kind of had this way of tackling a lot of material where I would tell people, no, I have to laugh at everything because if I don't laugh, I'll cry, you know? Which I think is, it's a way to deal with things, you know, and it was the way I dealt with things for a while, but I think what happened was after I turned 35, I started thinking to myself, you know what, I think I need to allow myself to cry a little bit, you know? I think I need to allow, like, sure, laugh, let's make a comedy, but I need to allow myself to actually feel the emotions that people are going through and actually go a little deeper than the script allowed me to back when I was 20. I was 20. There was no way I had the maturity to deal with this material the way I have now. And what I love about this chance to make this film is it does feel, it's very much, you know, a family comedy drama, but I do think it's as provocative as the art film that I wanted to make.
So, with all the great people that they've been working with you on this, what do you see happening for your next project? Will they be coming along with you? Would you be working with the same people? Because sometimes filmmakers like to, you know, bring on their own team.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm actually meeting with, you know, I had 3 producers and like 6 executive producers. It was crazy. So it was very much my first time working within such a rigid and standard infrastructure, right? But I'm actually meeting with Brian this Monday because we're working on another film together, and you know, now's a chance to kind of like mention where I'm going next, right? So we'll see if he even likes the ideas. But luckily, my main collaborator and main producer so far has been Mark DeLima, my husband. Who's a filmmaker and animator and designer, and I know he's got my back regardless of what I choose to do, because the truth is, after a certain point, you know, I don't want to say that I'm old hat, but I've been doing this for a while, right? And I'm not that guy looking to break through anymore, right? And breaking through, what does that even mean when you're trying to tell personal stories from a Filipino perspective or a queer perspective, or specifically from a queer person of color's perspective, right? You kind of have to accept that if you want to tell your story authentically, breaking through might not be a major value for you, right? So I kind of feel like moving forward, if this is where I'm going to be, and I like where I am, if this is where I'm going to be moving into my 50s, I'm just going to be as weird as I want. You know, I'm going to continue.
I love it, yeah.
I'm going to continue to make my weird films and not worry about pandering to the people who can't take weirdness. You know, like I say, I think I've been doing all right.
I think that's wonderful. No, but you know, you tell a story with great creativity and intent, and so I love that, and I know there's definitely an audience for that worldwide.
Right.
So.
I don't know who they are, but they're there. You know, they've been there.
Yes, they've been there. They've been waiting, and you know, and they're embracing it now. We have all these different outlets where we can, you know, reach out to people with our art, and I think that's, technology is just evolving every day, and we're in a really sweet spot here in the Bay Area.
We
so
really
are. We just need to take advantage of all that. So, what's your biggest challenge as a filmmaker?
Biggest challenge as a filmmaker, I guess it depends on which like phase of filmmaking. But I will say that the one challenge I have that permeates all phases, like pre-production to production to post-production, will always be getting past the gatekeepers. You know, I think a lot of times people will, you know, say that that's something you worry about during post-production. It's like, no, you should be thinking about how you're going to get your film out there as you're writing it, you know? And the truth is that I think the word diversity is something that just kind of gets pimped so easily and in such a shallow fashion these days, that it's just kind of like there's a lot of puff piecery happening when it comes to like studios saying that they want to they want to work with a more diverse crowd. And you know, the truth is, with every film that I've worked on, I've had chances to quote unquote break through, as long as I like get rid of that one pesky thing, right? Like, you know, for the record, the lead character of Bitter Melon is gay and Filipino. And I remember at one test screening somebody saying, your lead character is both gay and of Asian descent. Too many identities, too inconvenient for the plot. And I'm like, wow, in 2018, like, I think I was a little more ready to hear that back in 2006 because I was 29 at the time. And I was, you know, I was green. I was a little old to be green, but I was green. I was like, hey, whatever you say. But like, you know, I am a ghost. Why is she Japanese? Fruit Fly, why is she Filipino? And why are all of her friends gay? And it's like, because it's a film about a Filipino woman who has a lot of gay friends. You know, and there are all of these different like levers that people want to pull and push on to make me successful, and I remember I made a joke once at a film festival when somebody said that they were really happy that I kept Fruit Fly super queer, and I said, yeah, because if I actually let somebody tell me that I had to remove the gay quotient, then I basically just kind of have like High School Musical, or I have like some musical that's actually kind of designed to be successful, right? And then I'd have to get a roommate because I don't know how I could live with myself.
That's awesome. I always ask my guests this question. If you were to go back in time and be able to tell your 16-year-old self a piece of advice, what would be what you know now, like throughout your life? What would be the one piece of advice you'd give him?
Wow, God. I guess, if I had to think about what I would tell my younger self, I think it would be something that I would tell all the younger people in my life right now, or maybe just people that I meet. You know, I think a lot of times people come to film festivals, and they come to me. Aspiring filmmakers want to come to me and ask me for advice. I'm no role model, but I think the one thing I would tell people is, you're not going to live much longer. So think about the last unkind thing you did and rectify that. Be a good person first and foremost.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a role model.
I mean, yeah, maybe, I guess, but I mean, that's, as far as filmmaking goes, I just kind of feel like that'll come. If you have a story and you have the will and you know how to treat people, you know, because film is so collaborative, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I do believe in auteurism as well, right? Like, I do like when I have the freedom to tell the story that I do want to tell, but you know, we're dealing with people here, you know, and I keep telling people that in the end, all this stuff isn't going to matter. None of this is going. Our aspirations aren't going to matter. What's going to matter is who's at your side, you know. And so, if that's all that matters, you might as well make this journey from here to there worthwhile.
Yeah, it's all about relationships, and I think a lot of people do miss that. You know, business is about relationships. It's all about what we can offer, and your art is an offering, you know, to the world.
Right.
And it does bring communities together, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love what you do. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad you're here.
Thank you so much.
So if people wanted to see your projects, first of all, they need to get a hold of you. So can you describe or tell us how to do that?
I made it easy for folks. I think I got tired of going to film festivals and like film screenings and seeing a bunch of cards around me that just were blocks of text, and like you can't remember all those hashtags and @ symbols because you meet so many people. And I feel like I have a pretty easy name to remember. I'm HP Mendoza, and if you go to hpmendoza.com, it just goes to a splash screen that has all the different ways you can contact me. And if you don't want to contact me, you skip ahead to the content, and you can see all my films there.
Got it. Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to have you, and I really want you to come back. So I want to keep up. Let's keep in touch, and when the next film comes out, I'm there.
Okay, good. I need you there. Yeah, I need you there too.
Yes, did you hear that? So, follow him on Instagram, Facebook, and you know, we'll see you next time on Bay Area Independent Filmmakers.